You're listening to a special episode of The Secrets of Star Trek. Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and this is a special bonus episode of The Secrets of Star Trek that we recorded as a thank you to our patrons at patreon.com/StarQuest for their generosity in making this and all our shows at StarQuest possible. We gave them early, exclusive access, but now we're sharing it with you to show you one of the benefits of being a patron. So please enjoy this show. Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to a special patron-only episode of The Secrets of Star Trek. And joining me today is Father Cory Sticha. Hey, Father Cory.
Hiya, Dom.
So while we have discussed the first 3 seasons of Star Trek Discovery on The Secrets of Star Trek, at some point we made a collective decision, along with Jimmy Hagan, not to cover the show going forward on an episode-by-episode basis. So we didn't talk about season 4 of Star Trek Discovery on Secrets of Star Trek. Now, I don't want to speak for everybody, but for my part, it was because the show failed to live up to the quality I wanted, and I didn't want to spend every week of the season bashing it on a podcast. That's no fun for me, and I'm guessing for the listeners. But, and Father Cory, I throw it to you. Similar? Different?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's... people say, "Oh, there's a complaint of it's not Star Trek, it's not Star Wars, it's not." It's like, no, Discovery was we'll talk a lot about it, but it's a very different show set in the Star Trek universe. Let's just put it that way,
right?
And I think the motto of this episode is, "We watched it so you don't have to."
Well, and that's the thing is we weren't going to discuss it on the podcast, but we had several requests from people who, even knowing how we feel about the show, because we've said before about it, they wanted us to have an episode discussing it. Now, Jimmy wasn't available or didn't want to do it. That's fine.
I think he's pretty open about his position on this.
Yeah, he never watched season 4 and he has no plans to. So I think that's fine. Father Cory and I, as you said, Father Cory, you and I watched it, so the audience doesn't have to.
And Dom and I both watched it as it was airing, as it was being released, and we discussed it at length. And one thing you kind of mentioned is about having to rant about it every week on Secrets of Star Trek, and it's fun to have those episodes of Doctor Who or Star Trek where we just, why did they do this?
Right.
Where we rip them apart, but when it's every episode.
Yeah, I want to have uplifting discussions, but and there are good elements in Discovery, but there weren't enough on an episode by episode basis. But talking about it as a whole season, we'll have some things. I think I have some things that are positive to say, and perhaps you do too, Father Cory.
Absolutely.
So, as a special benefit to patrons, you can determine whether that's a benefit to you or not. We're making our discussion of Season 4 of Discovery available first to you, the patrons, and later, perhaps to our general podcast audience, depending on how this all turns out.
Yeah.
So let's talk about...
last episode. This may be the last episode of Secrets of Star Trek.
No, this will come out on the 20th anniversary of Secrets of Star Trek or something. Anyway, so let's talk about that Season 4. It was 13 episodes that aired in 2 parts. It was split in 2 parts with a couple months in between, I think, where the first part of Prodigy Season 1 dropped on Paramount Plus.
So we had 5 episodes of Prodigy in the middle, and it was because of the virus that they had some production issues, and so they had to, instead of doing it all one season, they had to break it in half.
Right. They were catching up. I think usually with the post-production, they just had to catch up with the production. So there were 13 episodes. The first episode premiered in November of 2021, which is kind of interesting how long ago that is now. And it ended in March of 2022. And just to kind of follow up, we expect the season 5 of Discovery to show up sometime in early 2023. Nothing more is definite than that.
It's supposed to be after Picard, because Picard's supposed to be in February. So I would assume it's going to be closer to spring, early summer.
Yeah, probably look for it April, May, in that realm. So it'll be interesting. I'm curious, and I know what you think, Father Cory. How long do you think they're going to take Discovery? Because historically, Star Trek was 7 seasons and out. Like TNG And Voyager and DS9 were all 7 seasons and out. Enterprise was famously 4. The original series was 3. What do you think are they going to try to go for the historical 7 on that?
I don't know, because they've been following the trend with a lot of the Star Treks that they renew it even before the first episode airs, just off of the fans' reaction to like the trailers and the teasers and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in Discovery, they did that for the first couple of seasons. I think the first 2 or 3 seasons were renewed before the previous season even aired.
Yep.
This time, with season 5 being renewed, it was actually, if I remember right, it was either during or after season 4
that the renewal notice came out.
Not renewed before season 4 aired, if I remember correctly. Because I remember we talked about that there was some question whether or not season 5 would actually even become a thing.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if season 5 might be it, and they haven't had any kind of rumors about a season 6 yet. Actually, I haven't heard any rumors of even season 5 being finished yet, so I don't know.
Right. Well, that's the thing is, they haven't announced season. I'm just trying to look up a Memory Alpha. So it was during that hiatus of season 4 that they announced that it had been renewed. But like you said, that wasn't before. It was during. Yeah.
Well, like Prodigy season 2 was announced before season 1 even started.
Yeah.
Lower Deck season 2, season 3 were announced before the previous season started. Strange New Worlds season 2 was announced before season 1 even started. So they've had this pattern, and you see this a lot with the streaming services, is they will announce a new season before the current season even starts.
Yeah.
This isn't just Star Trek. I mean,
Amazon did that. Like, they announced that season 2 of Rings of Power was going to come out before although they spent $1 billion on it. So they better have more than one season.
Seasons out of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, from a story standpoint, and we'll talk about season 4, obviously, I just don't know how much they do the season-long story arc thing where Strange New Worlds is doing episode by episode with a overarching, perhaps, threads throughout the season. I just don't know, and maybe it's wishful thinking, I just don't know if Discovery has enough gas left on the tank to really carry us. If there's enough character story to tell to carry it to 7 seasons.
And that's kind of part of the problem with it, is it's not a flexible structure. TNG, Voyager, Discovery, or not Discovery, Strange New Worlds, DS9, Lower Decks, Prodigy, even Prodigy, which is more of a overarching storyline type model, has more flexibility. And we've been talking with Prodigy too. Are they going to have more than 2 seasons? Because of this lack of flexibility in that arching model. Of course, as Doctor Who has been using it for all of New Who, and it's more or less still been working.
But the problem with Discovery is it's set in a particular context and time period, 1,000 years in the future of the where they started. They can't escape really the constraints that they've put on the storytelling of this future disastrous post-apocalyptic sort of galaxy. And I think that's kind of confines it a bit. I don't know that they really have a chance to get outside of that.
I don't see the time frame or the wider galaxy as being the constraint. It really is the model they have chosen for the series, going all the way back to the beginning. We've joked about it where Discovery is, we're together in our togetherness, the USS emotional discovery, as I like to call it.
Right.
And that's more, I would say, the constraining part of it, because it's become more of a soap opera based in Star Trek than
it is
Star Trek series.
Yeah.
Having those, because actually that storyline of what happened after the burn and what happened now with the Federation coming back together is a very interesting storyline.
That's true.
That there's a lot there. Because there's
still
a lot of races that we haven't seen in Discovery.
Right.
What happened to them.
Right. Klingons. Well, we know the Romulans. We saw the Romulans, but yeah, some of the other Trek races that we know about. Right. Yeah, that's an interesting question. Yeah. So let's get into season 4 then, because it feels like we've reached the natural point to start talking about it.
Yeah.
Like I said, Discovery, the ship is still in the 32nd century. Burnham is now captain. Saru starts the season on his homeworld of Kaminar, which he's helping to rebuild, and to recover based on what he's learned about himself in the previous seasons. Interesting, Tilly, who is one of my favorite characters from the first 3 seasons, basically departs the show in episode 4. I don't know why. Maybe the actress had a personal, maybe she had a baby or something and needed to go or something like that. But she kind of departs, comes back for the finale. But it was kind of disappointing to see one of my favorite characters leave. She was, one that I really enjoyed to see. So that was.
And she became one of the professors, one of the instructors at the newly rebuilt Starfleet Academy. So the Starfleet Academy, after the burn, had basically fizzled out, had basically shut down because the Federation was so entrenched and so, couldn't move basically because of the issues of the burn. And so they restarted Starfleet Academy, and she took over as kind of like the lead instructor or something like that.
Right.
Even though she's a lieutenant or something, very low ranking.
Yeah, herself. One of the problematic parts of Discovery is just the agenda pushing that we get, and they are very, very upfront about wanting to show representation, and so we have this gay couple who adopts a non-binary girl and her dead but not gone and come back in a robot body transgender romantic interest. And it's every time it just feels like these characters. I mean, I like Stamets and I like Hugh Culber as characters, but both Adira and Gray just felt like they just they don't have anything to contribute, especially Gray. Gray's not even a member of the crew. Like, what are you doing there? Like, getting involved in things. Like, why are you a part of this show except for representation?
Yeah.
And just from a writing standpoint, it's a superfluous character. Apart from that, and that's to me emblematic of one of the big problems with Discovery is it's less about telling amazing stories and more about pushing a particular viewpoint and preaching. Right. Exactly.
That's a complaint I commonly make is, my job as a priest is to preach. It's not the job of a TV show to preach to me. If I want to hear preaching, I go to church, basically those kind of things. And that's a frustrating part about Discovery. And that's why we've tuned out on it. We don't talk about it is because there's more in each episode about the emotional attachments and the message of the week they want to send about this representation or that representation than there is the actual plot.
Right. And it's not that you can't have, it'd be wrong to have a gay character or something like that. And it's not that it's wrong to have symbolism or explore ideas, because TOS definitely had great episodes that were about, an analogy to an issue in our society, which wasn't preaching. So I'm trying to struggle to describe what's the difference between that and what Discovery does. And I think it's just, if it feels like it's in your face, if it feels artificial, that's what it is. Or if it smashes you over the head with it, as opposed to telling a good story that happens to connect to something else. I guess that's
right. Well, I think a good example of it would be from DS9 when Jadzia Dax met her previous host, Dax's previous hosts. Right. And that was the big issue. Excuse me, not previous host, met the girlfriend or affair from her previous host.
Right.
And there's the two women kissing scene.
Right.
And it wasn't that big of a deal.
Right. Well, it was the 90s, but yeah.
Yeah. But what I'm saying though is the episode was not written where that was the primary focus of the episode.
Yeah.
It wasn't that big of a deal in the episode. And actually, I'm trying to remember, the episode Dax where she met, or the episode where she met her previous host, there was one of those scenes again there. And again, it was not a big deal. It was not pushed as this is what the episode is about. It was just this was a part of the episode. Yes, it was promoted, but it was just it kind of came and went. It was a brief scene, and that was it.
As opposed to it being, it's often these scenes in Discovery are tacked on. They're added to their B plot or C plot, and they just feel like they're added on because we need to have, representation moment of the week. I mean, I'm not opposed to people seeing themselves in shows. I loved that they cast Uhura in, or Nichelle Nichols as Uhura in the first TOS. I love that they show a future where things are hopeful, but it's this, shoving it in there and cramming it in and constantly saying, hey, look at this. Remember, look at this. This is better than our world. They're better than us. They're better than that sort of thing. And it's, I don't know. It's the amount of it. So I don't want to spend the whole time talking about that, but that was one of the problematic aspects of the season was how often they really ramped that up in season 4. In the previous seasons, it wasn't as big, but in season 4, it felt like it went to another level. So
it's it just you go in Memory Alpha, and it really kind of shows their mindset of she had interviewed Michelle Paradise, who was one of the producers, one of the 500 executive producers. The opening credits take longer than I think half the show, but anyways, the gray storyline, the transgender characters storyline is incredibly important to us, and representation matters, and it matters that there are non-binary and transgender characters, matters that Black women capture, all that's fine, but when they make that the focus of the season, and that really is what it is.
How about just tell a good story? I don't think of Burnham as a Black woman as captain, but I'm not neither black nor a woman, so maybe that's not for me. And maybe a woman or a Black woman would have a different perspective and be grateful to see her there, and that's fine. But I want, first and foremost, I want these to be great characters with great stories, and I don't think it's good representation if they are not great characters with great stories. I'd be disappointed if it looked like they were just there to check a box. So
and the problem you run into is the thing that I mentioned to you before we started recording is as I was going through and reviewing the wiki, the Memory Alpha wiki, I had to keep going back and looking up characters.
Right.
And these were bridge crew characters. Like there's a Lieutenant Christopher. It's like, I don't remember this guy.
Yeah.
Lieutenant Reese. Oh yeah, I remember him. He was kind of the Asian character, Asian looking character, and so on. And it's just like, I don't remember much of the crew. And that says something, because, you could mention a crew member from any of the previous Star Treks, and if you're a Star Trek fan, you're going to know who they are. Like you mentioned her earlier. She was a fairly minor character in the original series, but people know who she is.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing is the characters in this series, apart from the big 4, maybe are very forgettable. I'm like, oh yeah, Janet Reno was in that one. And, and oh yeah, that's, what's his name? I mean, I couldn't even remember Hugh Culber's last name, know?
Exactly.
So yeah, and it's a huge cast. There's all of these recurring characters, and that's another issue. It was hard to keep track at times of all of these secondary characters and tertiary characters. And Saru is having a romantic relationship with the president of Vulcan, and there's the Federation president, and then the general from Earth, and so it was a little of that. I also want to mention another character that was brought out in this series, this season, was the Discovery's computer Zora, who we first encountered in the Star Trek, the short track from a couple years ago.
Calypso.
Yes, Calypso, which that takes place is set even further in the future. But it became this individual person, and this is as part of the ship's computer, which is very bad, by the way. Let me tell you, having your ship's computer being a independent person with their own motivations and thoughts. The episode Stormy Weather involved Gray helping Zora get through an emotional, being overwhelmed emotionally so they can act. And it's like, again, emotion. It's all about emotion.
Yeah.
And then there's another episode where Zora refuses to divulge information about the big baddies in this season, species 10C, because of ethical reasons. And it's like, it just, I suppose it could be interesting to explore that, but it's the way that they created this character and the way the crew reacted to it was not like, you know how Kirk would react. You're going to get this computer under control, or Picard, or, you know, any of the other captains in Starfleet. But in this case, it was, we wanted to be friends with it. And the captain was like, we need to protect our friend and, have therapy sessions. And it was just like, it just felt
the day your computer needs to have therapy is the day you unplug the computer and jettison out an airlock.
Right. I'd rather have one of those computers from the megalomaniacal computer storage at the Daystrom Institute. So another element of agenda and ideology showing up was the stunt casting in the season finale, or one of the last couple episodes, having
the last scene. President of Earth. Yeah.
The real life Democrat politician from Georgia, Stacey Abrams, showing up. Yep. And we're supposed to be all excited. And what it is it's showing how very ideological the show is. I mean, that's, to me, was emblematic. I don't want to see a Republican politician show up there either. I mean, I don't like having that stuff intrude on my fantasy escapism.
Well, admittedly, it's kind of funny because, Secrets of Stargate, obviously I'm on Secrets of Stargate. Yep. And there were times when the actual U.S. Air Force Chief of Staff, the sitting Chief of Staff, showed up on Stargate. And the first one was the one who was Chief of Staff when I was in the Air Force. Right. So that's happened there too. But
although that's a little different. Yeah. It's not a politician.
Yeah. Well, Chief of Staff is politician.
But when you get to that level, a polarizing election official sort of thing.
I was going to say, especially in that case where at the time she had still not conceded the previous election.
Right.
She still insisted that she had won that election. And it wasn't until now this year where she definitively lost.
Right.
She finally conceded. So
right. And it's so she was a controversial politician, and that's really what that's about, and I just don't want that stuff showing up on my fun escapist shows. And I mean, I don't recall if that's ever happened on Star. They've had stunt casting of other actors. I don't recall if they've ever had like a politician show up on a Trek series.
In Voyager, they had actually like the president or the prime minister of he was like the prince, now he's the king of Jordan, but he was like a one scene thing because he was such a big Star Trek fan that he had kind of like a walk through the hall type scene.
Right. He was in the background. He didn't even have a line, did he? Yeah.
No. Yeah. Like I said, it was just you're walking through the hall as Janeway and Chakotay are talking or whatever.
I mean, so an extra
not something prominent like this. No.
Yeah. It wouldn't have bothered me if she just walked through the background even. It's, but it's just she was given this speech. It was supposed to be inspiring and all this, and she was praising Burnham like effusively, and it was like over the top, and I was like, ugh. It was just so much, I don't know, wish fulfillment, over the top stuff. Oh yeah. It's like it felt unearned in that sense, and that's one of the things that bothered me about it. So and again, I feel like that's kind of emblematic of what Discovery has become.
Yes, very much so. And it's a lot of telling, not showing, as Jimmy likes to say.
Yes, uninformed attributes. I think that's the other one that we talk about, which is,
Burnham is the most perfect officer ever, and even when she argues, she's right in her arguing, and we're just mad because she's right in her arguing.
Even though she's a traitor.
Among other things.
Among other things, a mutineer. All right. Let's talk about some things we did like about this season. Some characters. I liked, again, David Cronenberg as Dr. Kovich.
Yeah.
Mysterious, always interesting when he was on screen. I always felt like that was he was very X-Files. I kind of liked that. I'd still like to learn more about this mysterious Dr. Cronenberg. I mean, Dr. Kovich.
Very deadpan in his delivery. No nonsense. Just he was a fun character. He really was kind of an interesting character that, of course, all the presumptions or the thoughts that, he must be, Section 31 still exists and stuff like that. It's like, no, he's just kind of his own character.
Yeah. There's something going on. I mean, he may be sort of in some sort of intelligence service or Section 31 type thing, but not necessarily Section 31. I want to find out more about him. I also liked Oded Fehr as Admiral Vance, who
he's excellent. He's very good.
He's a great actor. I always enjoy him in things. I like the character. I felt like there were times where I didn't like what they did with the character. I thought it was a little meh, but sometimes a little too soft on Burnham when she went off the rails, that sort of thing. But in general, I like Admiral Vance, and I thought he should have got a little more.
Agreed.
And as I said, I was disappointed that we didn't get more Tilly this season, because I always enjoy her. So the burn, like you mentioned, is still a main plot driver. This idea that starships can't get around like they did because dilithium is at a premium. I feel like there's a little bit of a contemporary analogy to oil, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
But that means Discovery is the only ship that can reach certain places, which makes for some interesting plot development. That's good. It kind of evokes the Age of Sail, when ships would sail off from their home country, like from England, and be gone for 18 months at a time out of communication range and have to do things on the, you relying on the captain's judgment. So I like that idea. So,
and they're starting to kind of pull that back by exploring more of the spore drive. Like they've got a prototype spore drive that plays part of this episode or this season. So they're starting to kind of, and of course, now that they know the cause of the burn, which we ranted about that at length, you can go back and listen to that.
Right.
But now they know the cause of the burn, and they know that can never happen again. They are starting to spread out again. They are starting to, find more dilithium. Well, they've got a whole planet of dilithium, which is where the burn started from. And so now they're mining that, and they can do more.
Right.
So they do have that advantage.
Yep.
Now.
So the big plot driver for this season was the anomaly, though. This dark matter anomaly that would show up seemingly at random in different places in the galaxy and just destroy stuff, whole planets. Apparently there was a reaction to COVID, that it was sort of, I don't know, I'm not sure how, but that was what I read, was some of these, like, this season's plot was a reaction to the pandemic's effects. I'm like, COVID didn't show up and like wipe out cities and stuff. It was. Yeah.
I'm sorry if you're watching the video, you saw me just pull a Spock on that one, with the raised eyebrow. It's like that wasn't. I mean, it was. The dark matter anomaly was a very interesting plot. I really liked the dark matter anomaly plot. I thought it was a very interesting thing. I thought it was something that could have been done very well in other Star Trek series.
Yeah,
I think other Star Trek series could have handled it extremely well. And it would have been a very interesting story. And I hate to say it, but if you stripped all the stuff we complained about from Discovery, the dark matter anomaly plot would be about a 2-episode, 3-episode serial.
They would have figured it out a lot earlier. Well, and I also wasn't thrilled with the resolution, which was basically emotional attachment to aliens. Basically.
Yeah. Well, you'd mentioned like the 10C is the big baddies, and they really weren't big baddies. They were just misunderstood.
Right. They weren't bad people. They're just badly drawn. So, so what it is this anomaly had been sent out, and it was by this extragalactic race that was harvesting materials and unintentionally destroying whole worlds while doing it. So, yeah.
I would actually would believed more if you told me that it was actually an analogy for mining for like rare earth minerals in Africa or something like that. Because it was a mining scoop. Yeah. It was it would go through and it would mine resources from whatever, star
whatever it touched.
Destroyed, and that's what the 10C used to survive, was the resources they got from it.
Right. We have Book. He's still important to the series. He's Burnham's romantic interest. He's sort of an independent agent on his own. But he ends up this emotional rogue element, after his planet's destroyed by the anomaly. And we have this big thing of Burnham having to chase him down and arrest him before he can do something bad. And, we end up with him kind of departing the series. I think that was his resolution, was he's gone now. But I'm not sure if that's a permanent thing. They could this conceivable they could bring him back, but rather than going to jail for his awful this committed the ultimate crime, he's just going to have to go do community service with people who were hurt by the anomaly. It's like so no consequences for what he did. Yep.
Yeah, and it admittedly, that's one thing that's set wrong with me is he's kind of the character they pick on. He's kind of the character that everything bad happens to. And so of course his planet is the one that's destroyed, and he's the one that has to deal with the consequences of that. And admittedly, though, he is one of the few main crew of the series that is from that timeline, so it's understandable.
Right. So, a couple episodes that seem to stand out to me is the fourth episode, that one where Tilly departs, called All Is Possible, was a cadet episode. And that's sort of one of those Star Trek tropes you end up with a few times, because we've seen that a few times in Trek, where it focuses either on lower deckers, like junior crew, or cadets, like academy cadets. And so this one had Tilly and a group of cadets in Adira on a mission that goes bad, and they're stranded on a planet, and they have to work together to survive, symbolizing the fractured nature of the Federation coming back together again. What did you think of that one in particular? I thought it was okay. I thought there was some good elements to that one.
It was a decent episode. I liked it more or less. It was, like you said, it was kind of a almost paint by numbers. These people who are from different races that disagree, or that have had bad blood, not even disagree, have bad blood, have to work together, and now they're best buddies because of their getting through the difficulty. But it was not a bad episode at all. I mean, that was one of the ones I remember much more fondly than some of the other ones.
Yeah. Another one that I liked was the one that was following, called The Examples, and it was an interesting one about this planet. The anomaly is coming. They have to evacuate people. And there's a prison where these prisoners are held. They're the worst of the worst. And they're the people of the planet are leaving them to die, because that's, that's just punishment for them. And it turns out they've been imprisoned unjustly, that the punishment does not fit the crimes, apparently. It's a little bit of a Jean Valjean, Les Miserables sort of situation. And this one character refuses to leave, says, I have to stay because I did a thing bad. I'm actually being justly punished. He had accidentally stolen what their culture has as an invaluable family heirloom, and then murdered the owner of it in a struggle. And so he felt he deserved to stay behind and to die for his crime. That would be just punishment. And I thought that was an interesting exploration of the morality of prison, of crime, and also a bit of he had a bit of a redemption act. Like he wanted to do what is the term? Do penance, in a sense, the ultimate penance, in sacrificing himself. I'm not sure I would agree that it's a good thing for him to commit suicide, essentially, but I like the exploration of this. What did you think of that episode?
Oh yeah, no, I agree. And again, you've got it's interesting because you didn't really have the colonists who are refusing to leave. That's often a trope that they'll do, is you always have the one old crotchety guy. I moved here and 50 years ago, and you can't take me off my land.
Right.
Well, in this case, it's not that. It's no, I deserve the ultimate punishment for this. I deserve to. My crime or my punishment is just, and I deserve it. So that's actually kind of an honorable way to look at justice, and to really show conversion, that he recognized, the harm that he did. And, penance is a good word for it. It really is.
Yes. So, are there any other episodes that stand out for you that's particularly better than others?
The one I remember that I really actually kind of liked was Choose to Live. That was the Malat nun who was protecting the colony ship. It was like a colony moon ship.
Right.
And that was actually, I like that, where, they had this nun, Malat nun, who seemed like she was going rogue, that she had gone rogue, and she was killing people unjustly and stuff. And it turns out that she had found this colony moon ship that had escaped the explosion of this race's planet, and she was protecting it. And the Discovery crew were able to help fix it so that they could then be brought out of cryosleep and go off. That race could be reborn, basically.
I like the idea. As a reminder, the Quat Malat, one of their tenets is, in addition to absolute candor, is to fight for a lost cause. Mm-hmm. I think it's a fascinating, that originated in Picard, the Picard series, but I think it's a fascinating idea. It's like, and it's almost a Christian idea of to kind of fight for the lowliest, for the defenseless, the innocent, those who have no one else will fight for them for a cause that is seemingly lost. Now we have in our Catholic faith hope, because we know that God can right straight with crooked paths and to do the miraculous, and so fighting for a lost cause is not a hopeless thing. So I find that interesting to see that in this, and that was a good story, that episode. I like that.
And then, not so much story, but kind of the whole plot line of learning how to communicate with 10C. I thought that was interesting, because the way that they established how they communicate, again, in another Star Trek series, would have been much more interesting than it was here.
Right.
Because the way it was is they communicated through basically pheromones. They were emotional powers.
Emotions.
Pheromones. It was through emotion, but it was through pheromones and through lights from the person speaking. And I thought that was actually quite interesting that they would speak this way. And if it wasn't for, I'm sorry for the pun in advance, but if it wasn't for the fact that this was in a series that is clouded by emotions, the idea of communicating through a cloud of emotions and lights could be very interesting. Could have been very well done.
I thought the whole plot of using math as a bridge, mathematical equations as a bridge language, and I thought that was interesting. That was really cool, hard science fiction that they've inserted there, and that was well done, because you had to explain it and show it in a way that is that the audience can grasp on screen very quickly. You don't have like a novel, you could write pages about it. So I think they did a decent job with that. So you're right. I did like that part.
I agree with that as well, because that is an actual thing we've done. Isn't the Voyager plaques, the plaques on Voyager 1 and 2, don't they have like mathematical formulas to kind of show that, like the what is it? Yeah, I can't remember which one it is, but Pythagorean theorem and stuff like that. So
it's called Linkos. It's a constructed language, a real one, developed in 1960. That's designed to be understandable by any possible intelligent extraterrestrial life form in communication. So they used a form of that to communicate. So I thought that was really cool. So one of the things I wanted to talk about was what makes Discovery different from Strange New Worlds. Like, because we're in agreement, I'm sure. We love Strange New Worlds. I think it's the best new Star Trek and better than some classic Star Trek series. I love Captain Pike. I love the storytelling. What makes it better than Discovery, which are being made essentially by the same general group of people? Alex Kurtzman is the overall runner of the Star Trek universe. What do you think is the essential differences?
Well, I think with Strange New Worlds, they've tightened up. One complaint again is Discovery crew seems so big, it's so unwieldy. Strange New Worlds is much tighter. You still are you're focusing more. And of course, this has been a complaint of Star Trek. They always focus on the bridge crew, and then there's the lower deck people, which they have a series for that too. So
that's right,
which is great. But you're focusing more on the bridge crew. So you are focusing on Uhura. She's cadet, but she's she's there. You've got Pike, you've got Spock, you've got Una, number one.
Yep.
And a couple others, and it's really tight crew. And and they're not slapping you upside the face every episode with some togetherness message. Or yes, there's teamwork, and they talk about they have to be a crew, they have to be a team, which that's always been a part of Star Trek. With even with the jokes about Kirk, and being the Lone Ranger.
Yeah.
There's still there's crew work, and there's still teamwork, and there's still, development between the characters and so on.
And you can be a team and work together and be close to one another without it having to be gushy, which is what and there is not as much emotional angst in it. Pike is dealing with knowing his future that is coming, his fate.
Yep.
And that causes him some angst, but it's not wallowing in it like Discovery does. In fact, one of my problems with Discovery is how often you have people just standing around talking about stuff and talking about their feelings and talking about it's less talking, more doing.
Yeah. The ship's going to blow up in 5 minutes. So let's spend 4 minutes emoting about how we feel about the ship blowing up and losing all our friends. And we'll fix it in 30 seconds.
Right. I mean, there was at least one moment where good thoughts saved the day. Like, let's all think good thoughts. It's like, what is this, Peter Pan?
Yeah.
Tinkerbell, you will live. I mean, it was like, come on. The other thing that bugs me about Discovery that I haven't yet seen in Strange New Worlds is whenever the writers can push symbolism on an agenda, they do it. Like, they just never lose an opportunity to do that. And that it just keeps taking me out of the story every time. Whereas I feel like with Strange New Worlds, the number one priority is to have fun telling a great story.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the difference. I just don't feel like that's the number one priority in the Discovery writer's room.
Yeah, the Enterprise Bingo is a good example of that.
Yes.
They had, different things they had to do. And like one of them was phasing, hitting each other with the phaser at the lowest setting. That was a fun scene.
Yeah.
Walking on the hull of the ship without a spacesuit. Because they did the English, the shield, the energy or the oxygen bubble. That's the word I'm trying to say. The oxygen bubble, so they could sit on the hull,
right?
Stuff like that.
Yeah, that and there was another the fun where they had like the fantasies, like they were playing, they were made to be like characters in a story, and there was fun stuff like that in the series that Discovery doesn't feel fun. And that's actually a big part of it too. It just doesn't, it feels like work. It feels grim. I mean, there are light moments, but overall it just feels grim.
And that's, it's interesting because, let's look at the new series that have come out, both animated and live action. Discovery, not, again, not fun, not interesting. Picard, a little bit of fun, but it's still kind of dark.
Yeah.
But then you got Strange New Worlds, much more fun, much more entertaining. It's relaxing to watch. Lower Decks, hilarious.
Oh, yeah. All fun.
I mean, it's got a few episodes that are like, oh, why did you go there? But that's beside the point. It's absolutely hilarious. Prodigy has really surprised me, where it's just a fun series to watch. In fact, I'm looking forward to, we're recording this on a Thursday, right before the last episode, at the day the last episode came out. That's what I'm going to go do right after we're done recording. Watch the last episode of the season. I'm looking forward to it. It's, you can see they've kind of learned this is why Star Trek worked. Because it's fun. You go back and watch TNG. You go back, watch the original series. And it's fun to watch. You enjoy it.
Yeah.
Discovery is a slog.
Yeah. And I still watch it. I don't always look forward to it, but I watch it because it's Star Trek, and I love Star Trek. I love the universe, and that's one of the things I keep hoping for more, and to glean out the good stuff that we've talked about. There, like we said, there is good stuff there worth gleaning out, at least for me. Yeah.
The question I asked myself though is, are there episodes of Discovery you'd go back and watch? And I would say for me, it's only from season 2, because that's the season with Pike. That's the Pike season. And that is, and we've talked about it, before when we were discussing Discovery before. Season 2 is the best season so far, in my opinion, for Discovery.
Right.
Because it did have some of the fun. It did have some of the adventure, and, Pike is such a great character, and the characters were starting to gel. And then they got rid of him and moved him to the future and threw all that away.
But yeah, Pike. Well, I mean, thankfully they gave him his own show. Yeah. But Pike, played by Anson Mount, is a great character. I really enjoy Anson Mount. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it just, there's nobody on Discovery that I look at and go, oh, that's my favorite character. I mean, aside from Tilly. Yeah. But Tilly's a minor character. There's none of the major, forward characters. I just don't, I just don't think they're great characters.
Actually, I take it back. The 2 episodes I would go back and watch are the Mud episodes from Discovery.
Oh, I'd watch those too. Yeah.
Those were good.
Rainn Wilson is Mud.
Yeah, that's what Rainn Wilson is going through, killing everyone, and then jumping back in time and doing it again and again and again. That was actually fun.
Yes, there was. So, I guess to wrap it up, any last thoughts on season 4 of Discovery? Anything we left unsaid that you wanted to mention?
No, I wish they were doing season 5. I still see they could turn this around, but they would have to really retool the series. That they would have to pull themselves out of the emotional limitations they put themselves in. And I don't see them doing it because they're proud of it. They're proud of what they've done. So
I know.
I'm hoping season 5 is the last. And I'm happy that there's other Star Trek out there that is so much better.
Well, I would agree. I hope season 5 is the last, only because they could then redeploy the resources they're using to make Discovery to other shows that they've promised.
31 with Bashir.
Right. There's that rumor that Alexander Siddig is going to come back and be in the Section 31 series, maybe with Michelle Yeoh or instead of Michelle Yeoh. That
one could be. We were talking about this before we recorded our last episode of Secrets of Star Trek, and her numbers are up. Her
profile,
her stars up. Her profile's up. Her stars risen. She, and of course she's always been a well-known actress, but especially now,
right?
So she could be a reoccurring guest.
Yeah, I mean, Emperor Giorgio is such a great character, screen chewing character. Another reason why, by the way, Discovery is not as good in season 4 as it was before is the lack of Giorgio, who provided that element of fun and chaos, and that's another thing we lost. So, I kind of hope season 5 is the end, and that we can move on to other new Star Trek from there and see where it goes. And honestly, I'm glad that we're not doing week by week of Discovery for another reason, which is during that period we can then go back and talk about all that classic Trek we haven't talked about yet. We have listeners there. Yeah, and we have listeners who are dying for us to talk about that stuff because for whatever reason, maybe they're just not as interested in the Paramount Plus series, or they don't have Paramount Plus and that sort of thing.
I know there are people that don't want to be spoiled and they want to watch it all in one shot. They want to subscribe to it because it's expensive. You're talking, $10 a month or a little under that. And it's, week after week after week after week. Well, if you can just pay 1 month, watch it all, cancel it, wait till the next one's done, watch it all,
I mean, you could pay for a month and binge watch a whole season of Picard, Lower Decks, and Prodigy in that 1 month. You could get it all at once. So, yeah, I agree. And Strange New Worlds. So, all right. So I think we should wrap it there. I think we've had a long enough rant about Discovery.
Frankly, longer than I thought, but
hopefully it also came across that we do find some good things about the series. It's just the balance is off on that. So before we go, I'd want to take a moment to thank our patrons, our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Star Trek and all the other shows at StarQuest. We could not do this without your continued financial support. So we would love to hear from you what you think of Star Trek Discovery and especially season 4 and what you look forward to in the future, perhaps season 5 or other series. You can do that by visiting this post on Patreon and leaving some feedback there. You can go to our StarQuest Discord server at sqpn.com/Discord. We have a patron talk channel there, and we also have a Secrets of Star Trek channel as well. You can send an email to trek@sqpn.com as well. You can always subscribe to The Secrets of Star Trek by visiting sqpn.com/trek. And until next time, Father Cory Sticha, thank you for joining me and sharing The Secrets of Star Trek.
Well, thank you, Dom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to this special episode of The Secrets of Star Trek on StarQuest. And remember, live long and prosper.
Live long and prosper.
We hope you've enjoyed this patron's special episode. The Secrets of Star Trek is only possible because of the generosity of our patrons on Patreon. If you'd like to support The Secrets of Star Trek and enjoy this and other special benefits for patrons, please visit us at sqpn.com/give.